Hello and welcome back to another episode of WorkYogi Diaries, where I bring conversations with people on how they thrive at what they do. This is your host, Santosh Shiva. In these conversations, we learn some methods, principles, and techniques that can make our work more meaningful. If you're new to the show, please consider subscribing to the channel. If you like the video, please press like and leave your feedback on the comments below. In today's episode, we have an eclectic individual sharing her journey with us. She's been featured in leading publications like the Economic Times, The Hindu, Your Story, Entrepreneur Magazine, Femina, and The Ritz. She is a board member of Dream a Dream NGO that empowers young people from vulnerable backgrounds to overcome adversity and flourish in a fast-changing world using creative life skills approach. She currently serves as the CEO of Artflute, an online art store. Her mission is to turn every home into a gallery of exquisite art by independent artists. Her journey is centered in pursuing what's authentic, real, free from the constraints of the past. We get to dig into her decision-making approach. What's behind leaving a lucrative marketing job to start a venture of her own, the work she does with NGO Dream a Dream, and you'll be surprised and intrigued with what's her vision for the future. Let's welcome Padmaja Nagarur. Padmaja, welcome to Work
Thank you
Yogi
so much.
Diaries. Absolutely. It's a pleasure having you on the show. You have a fascinating story regarding your work and what you do. You are a CEO of Artflute, and we're going to get into that. How, why, and how did you
Sure.
get there? So before that, let me get you to do a quick personal introduction, and then we'll jump in.
Sure. I mean, part of the story is what you've shared, but my name is Padmaja Nagarur, and I do run artflute.com, which is an online art company where we promote independent artists across world contemporary art, advising customers on collecting art and almost making it their mode of expression. Apart from that, I have been a restless seeker, a tree hugger. I'm also a creative arts facilitator. So I'm work with an organization called Dream a Dream in limited capacity. And I'm constantly hunting for ideas that can be a way of creatively expressing who I am. Thank you.
Beautiful. You definitely are a multi-talented person from what I know, and it's so gladdening to see someone exploring different dimensions in one's being, which is something that all of us have to learn, and it's a something we can you get inspired from what you're doing. So let's start from a flashback where it all start. Let's start from early days. So what did you have in mind when you were studying with regards to work and career? Let's start there.
So, my idea of a profession was probably as early as eighth or ninth standard, but it was, I would say, influenced by uh, multiple discussions and influences and images that were thrown by. It could be my brother, it could be my peers, right? So it ranged from being a chartered accountant to definitely not engineering because that's not something that I wanted to get into. But there was this unexpressed, unexplored desire of wanting to be a dancer,
Mm,
but it wasn't really seen as a profession. It almost was like default rejection of wanting to be a
mhm,
dancer, right? But then, yeah, of all the options, I think the strongest influence was that of being a chartered accountant. And that became like a logical progression of what I should choose, what subjects I need to pick next, where I should be headed next, and what I should be choosing to do. So it was almost like a I was going with the motion of
Hmm.
it,
Hmm.
right?
And what happened to the dance? Did you actually learn dance at that point, or that well fell by the wayside?
Yeah, so I learned dance till I was about I would say 12 or
Hmm.
13, and the desire was so strong that I also applied to Kalakshetra, and it turns out they had an age restriction of 21 years, and I was just about 21 when I applied, and yeah, so
And
uh, that did not
and
materialize.
what form of dance did you learn?
Bharatanatyam.
Do you still practice Bharatanatyam?
Not in the traditional
Hmm.
sense, but those little moments when I find wanting
Hmm.
to, yes.
All right. Terrific. So coming back to your journey on the work, so you chose chartered accountancy, which is very interestingly almost a in contrast with performance arts, very right brain, creative
Yeah,
arts, to a very accountant, mathematics, statistical choices. So how was that? So
yeah.
did you pursue that?
I think sense prevailed. I think my resistance was much stronger. So the moment I took up an application to even apply to CA, I decided that I did not want to choose going ahead with that as a profession. But the irony is, what was actually my strength of making that choice for myself. I saw it as a failure,
Mhm.
right? I saw it as a not having ability to do something like a chartered accountancy, but actually it was me choosing for
Mhm.
myself, right? So yeah, so that was one. I think it's what one may call a reframing of the choice that I made earlier, right?
So what did you do?
So the like I said, then I did consider it as a failure, so I had to quickly find a way to confront
Mhm.
that, right? So the next best profession or the next best route that I could take was MBA,
Mhm.
because I think when you're neither an engineer nor an artist nor of any other profession recognizable, I think the next best I would say popular choice was that of doing MBA, right? So that was it.
So when you say you, so what happened? So you wanted to do chartered accountancy, but you didn't make it. Is that what you're saying? I didn't catch that.
Yeah, so I didn't say I wanted to do chartered accountancy. What I mentioned was that was the strongest
Mhm.
influence around me,
Okay.
right? Of saying, hey, this is a great
Mhm.
profession, this is what you will be cut out
Mhm.
for. But it wasn't an expression of my choice,
Okay. So it was your choice not to
right?
pursue it.
It was my choice not to pursue it.
And so why did you call that a failure? I think that's a victory in what I'm hearing.
Yeah, which is what I think after these many years I've realized that that was me, that was the young 16-year-old or 16-year-old kind of claiming my
Mhm.
choice of not wanting to pursue a profession that I
Yeah.
didn't
Yeah.
want to.
Makes sense.
But that is me after so many years realizing that,
Yeah, yeah, and I think
right?
and that's how all our lives are, right? When you're making a choice at a given time, you don't have all the data.
Yeah,
Like I was reading this book, I'm reading this book called Rethink by Adam Grant, and he made a nice point about life's like driving in a dark, foggy night. You get to see as far as your fog lights throw, and you're making choices based on that. So perfectly valid. I think that's
yeah,
what all of us do. I mean, it's at that point, but to have the courage to say no to something that didn't connect with your heart and instead make a choice is a powerful thing to do, and something that people who are listening
yeah.
to this can possibly Note down.
Yeah, yeah.
Yep.
And I would say it's also another way of looking at it is responding to your intuition, right? And more often than not, which is very strong, sending out a strong message. Right?
Right. All right. So you chose to do a degree in management, and then what happened? What did you? Let's you. I'm sure you passed in great colors, and then what happened? Where did we start? And from regards to your work.
Yeah. So while I was doing my post graduation in management, I had a preference and a liking towards marketing, and I think it was to do with the storytelling of brands and the positioning of and just building of a brand, right? And so that was about the time when I moved back to Bangalore, and among many that I picked and chose and interviewed, I landed at Wipro
Mhm.
Technologies, and was part of the corporate marketing team for about 3.5 years, and just as a fresher.
And how was that like? How was it to be a marketer?
It was, I mean, in the hindsight, right? Not when I was in the thick of things, but in the hindsight, I think it was amazing because I had some beautiful
Mhm.
mentors who were not, who were both assertive, um, supportive, sometimes nasty, but mostly very encouraging and true
Mhm.
mentors. Right? And I think whatever I've learned of marketing, I kind of owe it to two of
Mhm.
them, right, that I've learned. So that was amazing.
And while all this was happening, um, were you looking to continue build your career in marketing, and when did Artflute come into life?
Yeah, there's a bit of a story before I got to Artflute. Um, So after my stint with Wipro, I joined my head of marketing, who stepped out to start her own consulting firm. So I joined her as her lead consultant. So we worked with mostly small and medium businesses and a few larger companies as well, designing their marketing function and operations. Right. So
Mhm.
we continued in that. So I was with her for about 2 years. Am I allowed to name?
It's up to you. Yeah, I mean, it's.
Okay, okay. Now I just want to say thanks to my mentors Jesse and Vinod from who I used to work with at Wipro, and with Jesse I moved into the consulting firm that's called Paul Writer, right? So I was there for about 2 years, and but while I was working with Paul Writer, I also, this whole interest in dance
Mhm.
kind of morphed into my interest in theater,
Mhm.
right? And so I joined theater, and my pursuit in theater started from the time I joined Wipro, and around 2010 is when I did my another sort of like a workshop with a theater group based in Bangalore, and which was pretty transformative
Mhm.
for me personally. And it sort of got me to ask myself if I'm willing to take the risk of pursuing theater full time,
Mhm.
right? And so when I say theater full time, were one as theater performance, but two as theater, using the medium of theater for
Mhm.
change, right? Because I saw the power that theater had to influence young
Mhm.
minds,
Mhm.
and if I could have a transformative experience at whatever age I was, I was like, what amazing things theater can do for young people, right? So that's how my pursuit started, and I parted ways with Paul Writer then, and pursued theater for some time, and I think for about, I would say, 1.5 2 years, I was um, designing different programs, hunting for the right organization that I could be associated with, where I could really match my intent of using the power of theater for
Hmm.
change. Right? And that was about the time I got introduced to Dream a Dream,
Hmm.
the organization that I'm continue to be associated with,
Hmm.
not for profit, in the space of life skills education, right?
Beautiful.
Empowering young people from vulnerable backgrounds, right? And around that time is when my partner Aditya started this firm where he wanted to promote photography,
Hmm.
right? Because that's how it all started, promoting works of photographers and introducing a different model of consumption of subscription,
Hmm.
right? Art subscription. And I, with the I wouldn't say expertise, but with the passion of marketing, I jumped in to say, hey, what can I
Hmm.
contribute, right? In kind of taking this, in giving this idea a better
Hmm.
shape, right? So while I was working with in the space of life skills facilitation, also pursuing a little bit of theater, I also kind of said, hey, I'm willing to help you with this, right? And that's how it started.
Makes sense.
Um,
So,
with,
talking a little bit
yeah,
about the theater project, and
yeah.
so can you talk to a little bit about when you say life skill specialist, and what exactly are you? What kind of life skills are you enabling through theater, and how is it? So, talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, yeah. So with Dream a Dream, there is it's through the medium of
Hmm.
art, and when I say art, it's visual art, drama, poetry, right? And therefore, there was an element of theater
Hmm.
also. Now, how it's pretty experiential, I must say. So it's a little hard to explain theoretically how it
Hmm.
works, but I'll try and give you an example. So the way it works with theater also is that theater allows you to play in a very protected environment,
Hmm.
right? So when you're think of it, the best example that I can give is that of role playing in some
Hmm.
way, right? So when you're role playing in a theater setting, um, you are allowing yourself to respond in the most natural self,
Hmm.
the way you would in a real life situation, but then you're also in a very protected environment,
Hmm.
so you're not really facing the consequences of what you're doing.
Hmm. Okay.
But because you're going through that experience of responding to a situation, you're allowing yourself to deconstruct what you just did, right? And therein lies the insights of why you did what you did, what is the change that you can really bring about.
Hmm.
And it's almost like a game, it's almost like playing a game, to bring in that behavior change, right? More of it, I think I'll be able to explain only when you get to experience it, or probably I'll send you a little longer explanation. But that's how it worked. I mean, one of the transformative moments for me that happened when I was doing theater was this very I would say harmless, simple game called Accepting the Gift,
Okay.
right? Where the idea was that in partners, we would exchange gifts, miming the objects, right? But then when you're accepting the gift, you are in no position to reject. It's one of the rules of theater improvisation.
Yeah.
You have to accept, and accept it as a gift, and then make the most of
Yeah.
it. And so that kind of stuck with me, because I'm like, okay, if I'm able to play this game in
Hmm.
life, what can it throw up, right? And yeah, I mean, I can't share the details, but I did try it the next day in a work setting, and it worked.
Very clear. Yes, I've seen read books, and I've also explored improv in the context of how we can improve team dynamics, and it's beautiful. So for people who are listening to
Yeah.
this, in improv, from what I understand, and please add to this, in improv you take an idea, like let's say let's we can do that right now, maybe Padma. Like I'm going to say, hey, Padmaja, sing a song. Please sing a song for me.
Yeah.
And Padmaja is not going to say, can't say no or but. She's going to say yes and
Yes. Yeah.
and we kind of
Yeah. Yeah.
build a build a whole movement around it, or a project around it. So it's very beautiful. I mean, I find that valuable at home. I find that valuable interacting with people, because
Yeah.
we get into conference calls. I think we get into team dynamics, and you have two kinds of behaviors. One is that of complete submission, or you have complete challenge. Somebody's challenging you, and it's, I think, both are extremes. And improv is such a beautiful technique to say, hey, this is neither challenging or not submission, but it's about partnering and building together and moving forward. So
Yeah. Yeah.
it's beautiful.
Absolutely. I mean, that one experience with theater got me to explore multiple
Hmm.
forms, right? And that allows community dialogue. So, in fact, I remember doing a workshop with a theater actor on clowning,
Hmm.
right? And so to discover your clown
Yeah.
avatar, right? So the premise of clowning is that how do you play with your
Hmm.
impulses and make it part of your act, right? And there's another form called the theater of the oppressed, which again is a form that comes from Brazil, which is to work with the community to create a space for dialogue and change, right? And again, as the name suggests, it's to deal, it's to work with oppression, and how do you liberate both the oppressor and the oppressed, right? So theater has been extremely instrumental in my life over a period of time.
And all right, coming back to Art Flute. So you were just beginning to share with us about how Art Flute came about, and how it was a photography project um, that you jumped on with your partner, you said. And
Yeah.
let's get back there. So then what happened?
So we got incubated. We got selected as an incubatee with IIM Bangalore's NSR cell program um, for about, I think, 1.5 years. Um, so for us, I think the initial few years of running the company was a very happy-go-lucky
Mhm.
project, right? I mean, we loved being on the campus. We loved hiring young people to work with us, and so we were just enjoying the energy of starting the
Mhm.
company. And it turns out that we also kind of approached a company that I knew, somebody I knew, who was running Artflute as a brand. Um, and was kind of facing its own difficulties. And so when he met us, Neeraj, a dear friend of ours, he said, "Hey, there is synergies in how you're thinking and how we started off with Art Flute. So why don't you take on and run this?" Right. So that's how we, I would say, in other words, acquired Artflute, and almost spent a year consolidating the work that we had begun, and the artists that Artflute had on board, and so that's how we started, right? And kind of retained the brand name Artflute, because the name was so soulful,
Yeah.
and I don't think we could have come up with a better name. And yeah, I mean, that's the beginning of Artflute. So we got incubated and we got out and we continued to stay on.
And so prior to this acquisition, Adi and you
Yeah.
uh, were running a different business. It was a photography centered business. And did it have a
Yeah.
name as well?
Yeah. It was called Pix My Wall.
Pix My
I mean,
Wall.
we still retain it as a legal entity. Yeah. Yeah. Um, so it was to find a name that can become a verb, right? So that's how Pixmywall, and it is retained as a legal entity.
Got it. So Pix My Wall acquires Artflute, and that's where Artflute comes in. And got it, very clear. So
Yeah,
and yeah, so
yeah.
what's Artflute all about?
So initially, it still is, but initially it started off as an online platform to promote independent artists,
Hmm.
and mostly Indian artists, uh, to buyers, to collectors, to veteran collectors, to novice collectors, to businesses, and we initially started with the idea and promoted the idea of subscription in a bid to make art more accessible to just about anybody. Right? And that's how it all started. It took us quite some time to understand the world of art because, again, we did not come with the background of being in the art
Hmm.
industry. Um, but we did. I personally came with the idea of sharing the stories of artists that people could connect with,
Hmm.
right? And so that's how it all started. It has evolved in its avatar, in its sense of purpose, in the potential that Artflute carries, in the way it can operate, in the way it can function, in the way it can contribute to whatever little dent we can do in the space of art. Right.
And this is when you say art, you're talking about paintings.
I'm talking about contemporary art, and that can include original art of paintings of different media,
Hmm.
sculptures, installations, murals. Right.
Hmm. So, if you were to summarize, basically, Artflute is connecting consumers with um, original artists, and this could be budding artists. Uh, and so, how's it been? I mean, so is this a viable business for you? Is Artflute a viable business? Are people willing to pay?
Yeah, people are, and if they weren't, I don't think you would be here, and I don't think I'd be here talking to you. Um, it has, I would say, evolved, though I would say slowly over a period of time. And I'm not talking about, when I say art, I'm not talking about the market of auction,
Hmm.
because that's a whole different world, right? I'm talking about art where you have first time
Hmm.
buyers, young collectors, and probably a little more seasoned collectors. That's the market I'm talking about, and it has improved over a period of time. And but interestingly, that there still begs to be an approach for demystifying what the world of art can allow itself to be. Right? So there is scope for that. There is scope for allowing more people into the world of art.
And so I get that. So it's a, in your journey so far, what I'm hearing is you're at heart a someone who's been called by performance arts, Bharatanatyam, and then you talked about theater, and you're kind of expressing yourself very strongly there to make societal change. What about Art Flute itself? Do you find yourself expressing yourself in this business?
Yeah, yeah, and I think um, that's where it's evolved in many forms, right? In over the last couple of years. So, like I was mentioning earlier, I think my interest was in helping both the artists and the customers express their truest selves through the medium of art,
Mhm.
right? Which means that when we promote an artist, we are promoting not just their work, their technique, but also their story of how they came about to be an artist, their approach of expressing themselves through the medium of art. And so, also with the collectors that we speak to, the buyers that we speak to, who are finding a way to express their truest selves through the medium of art, right? And whether it's in the work of art that they're collecting or the work that they're commissioning, right? So that has been like I would say a central anchor to the kind of work that we've been doing both with the artists and the collectors. Over the last one and a half years, I think we started another initiative, which was almost like speaking to my larger intention of saying, can art really create the impact that I intend it to? And we started this initiative called Ungallery, which was basically to make art part of mainstream conversations and allow art to make sense of the world and also influence the way we interact with the world. And that took shape over the last 1.5 years, where we've been creating art-based experiences for audiences, larger audiences, where we are sort of intending to blur the boundaries between the artist, the piece of art, and also the enthusiast, right? And more so, the two areas that we've been closely working in is in the area of sustainability and education, right? Saying how can we use the medium of art to create a larger dialogue around the practice of sustainability, which is either very cool or very sort of esoteric in some way. Similarly, even in the space of education, we were looking at how do you design interventions where it can influence behavior change. It can also open up the artist community to engage with the idea of education and really redefine how we see education, right? Or redefine the purpose of education. So that's what we've been doing and rooting it primarily through this medium of Ungallery initiatives.
So what are your struggles in this? Clearly, you've been at it for 8 years. Like you said, um, you're still here. Um, but you're here because you've dealt with these different struggles and challenges and overcome them. Those are the stories I'm interested in
Yeah,
hearing.
sure. Which one do you want to hear first, the struggle or the example of the Ungallery initiative?
Let's start with the challenges first, and then we'll come to Ungallery and how that is going.
Sure. Sure. So the struggle has been both personal as well as an organization,
Mhm.
right? And I would say the struggle, my personal struggle, has been larger than that of the organization.
Mhm.
Um, and when I say my personal struggle is again, given the background that I've shared, that I'm more right brained and not necessarily the chartered accountant who was meant to be,
Mhm.
driving the numbers, rolling up the margins, and focusing on the profitability alone, right? That has been my struggle, right? How do I find that sense of purpose and create meaning with the work that I'm
Mhm.
doing, right? Because on one hand, especially when you're working in the space of art, you do have customers who come in with, oh, I have an orange couch with a yellow cushion, and I need like a sunrise painting to go with it. um, and of course, I mean, as a customer who pays, but what's my contribution in all that,
Mhm.
right? um, that has been the struggle,
Mhm.
right? In terms of saying, should I choose to work with that customer, um, and or should I say, hey, the purpose matters to be more, and do I have the luxury to say no to that customer, right? But I think the middle path that we chose was to really say that, hey, here is a customer who's wanting to explore
Mhm.
art, right? Now, how they describe what they need is different. So, can I have an engaging conversation with them and elevate their understanding of art, right? Which is effort intensive,
Mhm.
But at the same time, I'm kind of I'm talking into my need to be able to make that difference, right? And in that process, we've met some amazing customers, right? Who probably started with choosing to pick an art because it's a recognizable name,
Mm.
um, to really picking an art because it speaks to them, it's their truest expression,
Right.
right? And we've been developing relationship with them for life, and that's what has been beautiful, right?
Mm-hmm.
um, I would say that has been the I don't know if I should call it a struggle, but because it affects the economics, right? I mean,
Mm-hmm.
ultimately, with an organization running a company, it's down to the economics. That has been the struggle because otherwise, approaching scale with love uh, is what I've been wanting to
Mm-hmm.
do, and I'm probably slowly learning to do that.
So what? So beautiful. That's beautiful, and I think that's a core struggle for many businesses, and also for individuals. Right? It's like balancing purpose and economics. And so going
Yeah.
back to the examples that you talked about, a client who has a certain need, what did you have to do differently to get them to see your point of view? How did what did you have to do?
So again, I think I keep going back to my core strength of narrating
Mm.
stories, and I love having conversations with people about who they are, what their likes are, and what their desires are, right? And I keep going back to that,
Mm.
and in that process, also introducing them to artists who and kind of talking more about why they do what they do,
Mm.
right?
Mm.
Why they create those pieces of art, and why is it that they even like the sunrise? What is it that they're kind of picking and choosing, and right? So I'm talking even about customers who are businesses and who are like probably talking about picking 25 works in 50% discount, cash transactions, and right. So even with those customers, right, and it's down to who they are and
Mm.
why they're picking that art, right? And if they really, if they're absolutely not fitting in the scheme of who I would want to work with, we politely decline, right? I mean, there are customers, there are transactions where we've outrightly rejected because it just doesn't feed our soul.
Very clear, Padmaja. I can hear what I'm hearing is, in this whole balancing of economics, purpose, what I'm hearing is the whole humanizing of business, humanizing of experiences. Like you said, uh, people who are looking to buy art are also people, and they're buying a story. And to your point, your whole approach to telling a story about the artist, about the emotion behind the art, is really humanizing the transaction, isn't it? That's what I'm hearing in what you just
Yeah.
described.
Yeah, absolutely. And for a very long time, and since you mentioned the antidote to the struggle, right? And for a very long time, I believed I believe as part of the minority, right, for a very long time. Uh, Especially when you're surrounded by people who are uh, talking of scale, talking of growth, talking of unicorns, right? And when you make those hard choices, until I met uh, like-minded group, I would
Mm.
say. And again, I wouldn't say they're majority, but they're minority in the world when you look at them. But somebody who chose to believe in beautiful businesses,
Hmm.
right? And again, this is a group called the House of Beautiful Business, and who really approach business with an idea of retaining that romance and running a
Mm.
business, right? And so here I was saying, oh my God, I'm the only one, possibly among the minority who think like it. But here was a group that almost embraced the idea of romance in business. right? And I think that also helped,
Yeah.
that there were romantic fools all around the world like I am, and there's hope.
Hmm. Hmm. Yes, I saw that you in your LinkedIn profile. You call yourself a business romantic, and I think what I'm getting from what you're saying is a business romantic is someone who hasn't given up. Again, coming back to the human side of what business exists for, and
Right.
like and I struggle that with that all the time. Because if you're in a corporate setup, you're almost a cog in the wheel, and can you still find meaning and purpose being a cog in the wheel, looking at the larger ski purpose of why a business exists? A lot of there's been a lot of debates and discussions around what is the purpose of business. Business doesn't exist only to serve the investor. The business exists to serve humanity. It exists to make a difference in the world. And the more you have dreamers like you, the more that is going to be a reality.
Yeah, yeah, and increasingly, I think there is an adoption of this growing trend of. I think the last I heard was not a triple profitability, triple, what do you call that? Not Okay, I think I'm kind of losing it. But basically, when you're looking at profits, you're not just looking at the profitability of the business,
Hmm.
but you're also looking at profitability of the community, how you're impacting the community, how you're impacting the environment, right? So there is a growing accountability of how you're running the
Yeah,
business, right? And I feel there is only it's only time until businesses have to catch up with that,
yeah.
right?
I've also heard of a term called compassionate capitalism.
Yeah,
Yeah, beautiful,
yeah.
Padmaja. You know what I'm hearing in all what you're narrating to me is you're someone who's a gutsy woman who stands up for her values, and that served you well through these years. And I really continue to wish you luck with continue dreaming, continue to think bigger like you're doing, and be the light in the world. And that's what we need more and more of.
Thank you. When you put it that way, thank you.
Yeah. And what is Doi Tzu?
Are you bringing that up? Um, so, so that's a pen name to express my idea of um, the philosophy of being a doi.
And what is a
Um,
Doi? I mean, for the
and when I
listeners,
say, yeah,
let's assume the
yeah,
viewers who are
I was
listening to
just going
this
to
have
say,
no clue about what you're talking about. Please tell us what is a Doi.
yeah, yeah. I mean, it's just a word that I've made up, but it's on Urban Dictionary with the complete definition. Um, but it's somebody who is
Mm,
fearless and who's curious. Um, he or she is satisfied with standing, looking at a tree without really having the urge to name it,
mm,
looking at a piece of art without really having the urge to know what the artist has to say. So just standing in the presence of your life with absolute curiosity, as much as you would have been when you were a child,
mm.
right? So that's how I've always wanted to live my life, I'm pretty much in pursuit of living that kind of life. So whatever little nuggets of sharing that I want to do in that sense, I chose to use the pen name Doi Tzu, more to do with the Chinese philosopher, but with a Doi twist.
That's beautiful. It almost sounds like, and I've seen some of your poetry that you write. You're also a poet. for people who are listening to this. That's another angle of Padmaja. Um, and for someone who doesn't know who is Doi Tzu, it sounds like someone who's like a Zen philosopher who's actually coined those. It's very deep. It's very powerful, and it's very relevant. I would say in today's world. That's awesome, Padmaja. What you're doing with Artflute, um, for someone who started with, wanting to not wanting to, but who was pushed towards accounting to going to marketing to now using art to make a difference in this world, and thinking of business, reimagining what business can be. And I think this is also to do with I'm just saying this. I guess women leaders bring a lot more of that to the table, if I may say that.
Yeah, you can. You can. We bring, when I say we, and this is what I've been noticing, that there is, I would say, a compulsion, a good compulsion, to bring empathy in and purpose in the way we do what we
Yeah.
do. And I think it's also something that I picked up from my mom unknowingly,
Mm.
right? And of really, of really seeking the purpose in the work that I do. So I think, yeah, you're right in what you say.
Yeah. And
I would not call it women. I would say it's more a
yeah.
feminine
Yeah.
leadership, right? Because there are men who also carry that spirit in
Yeah.
them and they're able to do that.
Yeah. Well said. Well said. And terrific. So, hey, that was a great conversation. I think I'm taking away a lot in this from this conversation of what the from an art of what's possible, from a perspective of not to stop dreaming, to like you said, be like a child, or be like have that wonder and curiosity, be a doy. So be
Yeah.
a doy. That's what I'm taking back from this conversation. Terrific. So hey, I'm coming to the last part of this conversation. We're coming to a towards the end, and I have a rapid fire round, and I'm going to ask you some fun questions.
Oh, okay.
You ready for that?
Yeah.
All right. Okay. The first question I have for you is the person who inspires you the most.
This is the rapid fire, right?
It's not the
Um,
Karan Johar rapid
it's a
fire.
fictional.
So you can
Yeah.
you it doesn't it's a mild rapid fire. So you can take your time to answer, no problem.
So two characters and both are fictional.
Mhm.
One is Heidi, who's a mountain girl from the Alps, and the other is Po from the Kung Fu series, um, because they're both toys.
Okay, but what about a real doy? Are there no real doys in your world, like living people who inspire you?
Living people. So the interesting part about living people is that they inspire me in moments, right? So in that way, I have encounters with, I would say, pretty much everybody. Even if I may have a miserable experience with somebody who's walked into my life, they leave me with immensely valuable lessons, right? So I would say living people are inspiring in
So
moments,
name a person.
not like.
Name people. Name one or two people who inspire you, with names, and they're alive, or they're dead. That's fine too. But real people.
Why is it so important to uh, have just real people only inspire you? Um, I could think of one name right now, and his name is Byron. Okay, and I'm not going with the usual answers of Aditya, my partner, or my mother, or I should say Srinath because he will be upset if I don't take his name, uh, right? But I'm thinking of Byron, who lives in Meghalaya. If you've heard of the Living Root Bridge,
Mhm.
right? And to be able to nurture a community
Mm.
that's creating these bridges for generations to come and not necessarily for the immediate generation,
Mhm.
right? I think it's impossible for me to reach that level, of that community. But hey, you asked me for living people, so
Yeah,
there you go.
yeah, absolutely. What's the best advice?
And Srinath.
That's nepotism. All right. What's the best advice you ever got at work?
This is from my mentor in Wipro. And this was like because it was in my early days of career. And she said, just ask.
Hmm.
And you might get a rejection, but hey, no harm. And it was an important lesson for me because, again, as a woman, as a girl then and a woman now, um, I walked in with a lot of inhibitions, and that advice stuck with me and has stuck with me even today, right? Because the maximum I'm going to hear is a no. So that's the best advice.
I'm taking that down. That's a great answer. That's a great tip. That's a great tip. What do you fear the most?
Uh, Anonymity.
Hmm. Beautiful.
I don't know if that's the right word, but basically being a
Hmm.
nobody.
Yeah, yeah, I got it. I got that. Loud and clear. If a movie were made of you, A, what genre? B, who plays the lead role? And C, who gets to direct it?
Okay. I think it will be like a Pixar animation,
Hmm.
and it will be a combination of feel good comedy
Okay.
and who gets to direct it?
Who gets to play it?
I know this is the crazy. Who gets to play it?
Play your character.
Um, yeah, but it's an animation, right? So it's more about the voice.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's fine.
So Scarlett Johansson.
All right.
Okay.
Scarlett, I hope you're
And
listening to this show and making notes about your available dates.
yeah, Scarlett in English and Alia Bhatt in Hindi.
Mm, great choice.
Uh, and direction. This is just because it's going to be a crazy response. I'm just wondering how it will be when Christopher Nolan makes an animation movie, right?
I'm going to watch that for sure.
Yeah, it'll be crazy.
Yeah.
With Hans Zimmer composing the music.
Yeah. Beautiful. All right. Hey, that was, you did well in the rapid fire round.
No, I was going to ask, is there like a hamper,
Yeah,
a virtual
hamper is in
hamper?
the mind. I don't have a way to get a hamper across. And yeah, but why not? One day I'll have a hamper. All right.
Yeah.
Padmaja, that was a very enriching conversation. We're coming to kind of the end of our conversation here. I want to give you the last word. Is there anything you want to convey as a message? Anything that you want to say?
Yeah. I think if at all there is, I think it's a constant thing that I've been exposed to and telling myself is that um, your authentic voice is pretty strong if you allow it to speak,
Hmm.
right? And I think that should be the guiding force of what you're doing. And that's been like a almost like a constant reminder to myself and whatever I do, whatever I have to do.
Beautiful, beautifully said,
Yeah.
Padmaja. Hey, thank you so much for taking the time out and sharing your work story and your journey of life. Um, we wish you all the best, and we look forward to seeing Artflute going to the next levels. We look forward to seeing you continuing to make difference in the society through theater and any other forms that you take on. And let's also look forward to seeing Doi more in the mainstream, and we all can be Dois. So thank you so much, and have a wonderful rest of the evening.
Thank you so much.